Welcome to PM Express Business Edition. Strategy is seen as everything for every business in order to survive in today's market. But how do you get it right in this economy? That is what we'll be looking at on PM Express tonight in getting that business strategy right in 2022. And what about the larger economy as well? Well, I'll be engaging a finance person, a strategist, Dr. Daniel Sedo, and also an economist, Professor Peter Korte, who is director of ISE, as you look at your business strategy this year, surviving, making sure you get it right this year on business strategy and the economy on PM Express Business Edition. Right back after this break. Welcome to PM Express Business Edition as we talk about 2022, the strategy for this year and the larger economy as well. How do you ensure that you get it right? Well, I would be in studio Dr. Daniel Sedo. He is a financial consultant, he's a strategist, and also when it comes to getting it right for you as a business, he has some interesting advice for you. He's with me in studio and also connecting with us via Zoom is Professor Peter Korte. Is an economist and director of ISE. And these two gentlemen will be helping us in trying to get it right when it comes to strategy for your business and even the bigger economy as well. And Doc, thank you so much for joining us in studio. And how have you been? It's been quite a long time.
Yes, I'm good. I'm just minding my own business.
Have you been hiding or what?
No, I'm still
making some good money.
No, I'm still at my address working very hard.
And how has it been for you last year? Some would say that quite an interesting year. If you see the numbers of some of the banks, you ask yourself whether indeed COVID was around, and even some of the companies as well. They are doing so well.
No, we need to appreciate that this is life and it's happening. It doesn't matter what happened, you still have to work. And if you focus on your work, you'll get a desired result. That's the truth of life.
Did COVID put pressure on all of us to stretch our backs? Because again, I'm saying that I'm looking at some numbers. Some are public companies, some are not public companies. And I tell myself that, wow, Doc, I mean, even in December, most of the events organizers are engaged. It was a sellout for them. Even persons who were managing stores said, George, for once, all my shoes in my store were sold out. And I'm even struggling to meet orders as at now. Did COVID push us to the wall to think out of the box?
No, all that COVID is saying is that pay attention to your customer. That's it. The emphasis should be on your customer. He's the one something is happening to. You must understand what is happening to that customer and respond appropriately. That's all there is. COVID is saying pay attention, think deeper, work harder, and you'll get a result.
Let me try and connect to Professor Peter Korte as well. And for you, I know you also want to look at the larger and the bigger economy as well. I mean, it might be early days yet, but 2021, how would you describe that year, looking at the larger economy?
(2021) has been a good year in my view, except of course that we're working under some challenges. COVID came with its own challenges, yet as a country, once we strategize, we know where our growth drivers are, then we focus more on that areas, invest more in those areas. So we see, for instance, ICT, manufacturing, agri especially, also growing, because if you invest in the right places, you will certainly reap the benefits. We saw some wage agitations as well in 2021, but something we'll discuss further as we go into 2022, because it hasn't gone down well on the labor front, and I believe more has to be done with that. But I must say 2021 has been good compared to 2020, where we recorded, particularly the first 2 quarters of the year, we recorded a recession, we put it that way. But gradually the economy is bouncing back. We saw in the third quarter of 2021, growth of around 6%. That's remarkable. So I believe if we get our numbers right, get our revenue numbers right, and also ensure prudent spending, we'll continue to enjoy better living standards in the coming year.
But Prof, that 6%, it was in the midst of COVID. And again, I was reading a new World Bank report that sort of suggests that we might end the year being again the best performing in terms of our economic growth numbers among emerging markets. And we are still blaming our woes on COVID?
Well, if it hadn't been COVID, things would have been better. I mean, yes, we have grown because we managed to a large extent, government and other policies managing the pandemic has been good. So we were able to minimize the number of deaths. We were able to ensure that we operated under COVID. Economic activities picked up, the hotels and tourism sector picked up gradually, and many other sectors. Agriculture was resilient. So we to some extent, would, I won't say thank COVID, but we took advantage of the COVID and also ensure some good numbers or growth numbers. But then COVID also had brought its own challenges. That is why we tend to blame COVID. That even our expenditure, expenditure on PPEs, expenditure on drugs, expenditure on hospitals, and many other things went up. Similarly, in terms of revenue, we couldn't rake in the needed revenue. Some businesses were not operating, they were not making revenue. Some were even shut down. So it was a mixed bag where there were some great benefits or great positive growth in some areas. In some aspects, we suffered and we had to spend more in certain areas. So that has been the problem with COVID. It brought benefits or it brought opportunities. It also brought challenges.
Let me come into you, Dr. Daniel Sedo. And for you, I would say that for a lot of businesses, and which you actually consult for some as well and advise them, the 2022 plan is already in place, and we are not now going to tell people how to plan. But in the chief parlance, they'll say agrony from after you've planned 2021, getting into 2022 and implementing it. How is the COVID again going to impact on how you implement this plan for this year, Doc?
No, I'll take it from the perspective of the customer. I said it earlier. Now you set up basically to serve that customer. Now that customer has been affected by COVID. What is it that has changed about this customer? Now if you can identify what has changed about this customer and what his real need is currently, that is COVID. What has changed? COVID says there's restriction. You can move, keep a certain distance, wear mask, sanitize. So what do you do to this customer? How do you create convenience for this customer? So in your planning, if your focus is on the customer, you will get it right. If you don't shift the focus on yourself and say there's COVID, I need to do this, that is for your benefit, you will get it wrong. So set out to serve the interests of the customer. And if you get that right, you'll be rewarded. So for me, the emphasis is who is my customer? Who pays my bills? How do I satisfy that person? Once you get it right, you'll be rewarded.
So it's more about ensuring that you focus on the customer this year.
Correct.
What are the demands of the customer? What does the customer want?
Yes.
Making the customer kin and central around your business operations.
Yes. So for instance, the customer can no longer come to you. How do you deliver your service to that customer? So how do you engage the customer for him to understand that you care about what is happening to him? And engage him and say, how do we improve the quality of our service to you? Now, when you engage him, he tells you what his concerns are. And if you take the concern seriously and you reorganize yourself to serve that customer, you will be rewarded.
Interesting. I mean, there are some who have said that yes, the customer is king.
Yes.
But is it always the case? Because where everything should be tailored to meet the needs of the customer, even in an era where we still have a pandemic worrying us and threatening us, in getting with the implementation of this strategy?
So let's illustrate it. Let's say your customer is government. What is government's challenge currently?
Yeah.
Cash flow. So even if you render service to government, payment will be a challenge. So it's your responsibility to go to government and say, well, I provide service to you. I know COVID has created challenges, not for you, government alone, for me as well. Can we restructure payment terms? Or can we restructure how service is delivered? Maybe piecemeal. So you do a bit of it, you get payment, do a bit of it, get payment. So what you're trying to do is you are trying to win as well as you're looking after the interests of government. So basically, the philosophy should be, how do you look at what is happening to your customer? Once you can identify what it is, and then try to help the customer solve his problem, you will be rewarded.
Doc, let's come to the people factor.
Yeah.
I mean, you have the people, some businesses have tried to restructure going forward because of what COVID has done to them. What kind of persons do you need to implement this strategy of yours? Is it the same people, or it's about moving persons to a different department and all the rest, depending on that strategy that you have for this year, Doc?
So the biggest challenge for any entrepreneur or employer is how to get the right people. Now, people can be trained, but if the person comes with the right attitude, ready to learn.
And this time, are you ready to train? Some will say that most firms are not ready for that.
Not necessarily long-term training, but short-term, speaking to people, letting them understand what has happened, the change, and then the need to respond to that change. So if you have a team of people, you look at them and see how do you deploy them. Who is the one who gives you the maximum returns? So probably if you run a business that the front desk is critical, look, you don't put the lowest person at the front desk. You put somebody who can relate to people at the front desk to win that customer over to you. So you look at people and put them at the place where they can deliver their optimum. Now, if you don't do that, and then you do the workplace politics, it will hurt you. You must also know who your employees are. You must know your employees. You must know those who can give you results and those who cannot. Those who can give you results, retain them, improve them, reward them, and let them feel that they are part of the business. And once they feel that way, it will work for you.
I mean, Doc, you've talked about a very, very important thing about the workplace politics and all the rest. And it comes back to the people management issue, where there are still petty quarrels, petty fights, departmental heads struggling it out and all the rest, and all those things. How do you manage those as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, in getting the strategy right this year to ensure that we don't end up, instead of fighting external competition, we are fighting among ourselves internally?
Yes, what I say is when people are idle, excuse me to say, they do foolish things. So get people to focus on the work. They are there because of work. Now, when you schedule them properly and they are busy, and you are supervising properly, they will give you value. Now, people don't do what you expect ordinarily. They only do what you inspect. So if you give people work, which you've trained them to deliver on, you monitor. You make sure they are getting work done. If you leave people to be idle, you don't supervise, that is when they try to find other works for themselves. So it's how you manage people. And then let them play according to their strength. If he's good at A, allow him to do the A and give you best result, rather than forcing them into a different setting where they can deliver. Everybody has something potential. Everybody can do their optimum best when you put them at the right place.
For you, what do you think is the critical ingredient that you need as a business in 2022 to succeed in getting that strategy right? Is the people factor as critical? Is it about being able to adapt to situations, or what?
Everything is about people. I tell people laws don't work. It's people who work.
Interesting on the bit about the laws that
laws don't work. It's people who work. Guns don't kill. It's people who kill. So, and we are human beings, so our focus should be on human beings. Now, if you want your company to function, let's start from the top. The governance issues.
Corporate governance.
Corporate governance. Introduce them properly. That board that you set, get the skill sets right. Get people who are committed, people who can find the time to work on the organization and give direction. Now, if you get it right at that top level, everything else will follow. Yes.
I see. Let me try and bring in Professor Peter Cote. And there's a bit about dealing with the external environment. And when we talk about government, taxes issues, as you also focus on the bottom line and all the rest. I mean, for you, as an economist, and you also even have an opportunity to even serve on certain boards and all the rest, how do you manage that external environment where government plays in, i.e. your plan and strategy for the year, Prof?
Well, government comes in terms of taxation, in terms of regulations, in terms of providing utilities, constant supply of utilities, and many others. And in all of this, in the midst of COVID, in the midst of the pandemic, you ought to strike a good balance. So, taxes, for instance. How do you pay your taxes in this environment? Luckily, these days, we've gone digitalization, so it's much easier to pay or file your tax online. But it depends on the revenue flow as well. Are you making the right amount of revenue that you could pay your taxes? If not, then you ought to get your accountant or whoever to show your books in a good manner. So keeping proper records is very critical in this moment. Otherwise, if you don't have the records, the taxman will estimate your revenue for you, and that can put some people or some businesses in trouble. Then with utilities, water, electricity, supply, as well as the prices itself, you ought to factor all of this in your cost structure. If you don't, you have to use some of these utilities efficiently. You ought to educate your staff. You find staff going for break or lunch, they leave the air conditioner on, leave the lights on, go for another 2 hours and come back. There has to be some cost saving and efficient use of resources. Otherwise, you end up paying more for things you don't actually use, or you don't have not used them effectively or efficiently. Government comes in terms of the exchange rate or the macro environment. If there is macro stability, if exchange rate is stable, as a business you can plan your imports, you can plan your exports, you can plan your raw material, and so on and so forth. Issues about interest rates. Again, if the economy or the macro environment is not stable, your interest rates will go up. You pay more for your loan. That affects your business. So I can go on and on about several things. Government plays a very big role by providing the enabling environment for businesses to thrive. And one ought to work in line with government policies and strategies so that you take advantage of this enabling environment. And the environment is not enabling, certainly your business will struggle. But I like the point about raised by the earlier speaker, about the need to supervise. Supervision is very critical. You have all the laws, but if you don't supervise people, you will not get the most out of them. So you pay salaries, but your productivity will be so low, your profit will be so low, your cost will be high, and if you're not careful, you'll be out of business.
Prof, I'll get the view of an economist and I'll come to the finance person as well. In a year where it's so clear that government is going out to mobilize more revenue and taxes, What should the businessman be doing? I know there's this argument about tax evasion and tax avoidance. One is a crime, one is not a crime. From the economic perspective, what should be the strategy for the business person when a year that is obvious that GRA, many of them will not be in their offices, they'll be out in the field with all the sophistications to ensure that I pay the taxes, the Nesoda's firm pay the taxes, and in Professor Peter Kote's department, he said, pay the right taxes as well.
Yeah, I think government will not demand what is not his. In other words, government will not tax you for what you haven't earned. All you have to do is to keep proper book of records. If you have the records and they come and assess, they will tax you based on what it did. But the challenge we all face is that we operate too informal. We don't keep record keeping is very poor in many organizations. We run family businesses. Everything is business as usual. You buy something, you don't take receipts. You don't charge withholding tax. You don't. So if you don't adhere to the rules and regulations, that is where you have a problem. I believe there are tax experts or accounting personnel who can help you, even on part-time basis, to help you streamline your books. Once your books are in order, if you are making or incurring losses, there's no way government will come in or would ask or GRA request that you pay tax on your losses. So there are rules and regulations, and if they should come, if you have the books in order, I don't think anybody would be in trouble. But the challenge is where we don't keep proper books of records, and then they have to estimate your profits or your revenue and slap you with the tax. That is where you'll be found wanting. So I would urge everybody to file your records, file your accounts, and do the needful. I don't think anybody should fear. Government is there to protect you and I. Government is there to raise revenue, yes, to spend, to make the economy better, but government will not tax you for revenue you have not earned or generated.
Interest in government will not tax you for what you have not earned. Doc, I mean, I want to get your thoughts about this whole argument about being a smart business person to ensure that you only give to government what government deserves and not going beyond. What should be the plan in implementing the strategy to ensure that you don't end up paying more than what you're supposed to pay to government?
No, the challenge really is the way we look at these things. There's no difference between us and government. We are all working for the same interests. You need the government needs the businesses. So how do we operate as one unit and be very efficient? Prof talk about efficiency. If you look at this economy, a major problem is efficiency.
Both government and businesses.
Unfortunately, the public sector injects the private sector with a high level of inefficiency. We can debate that. So in my view, the government agencies should be working with the companies. Prof talk about record keeping. Sometimes they don't even understand the issues. So GRA, so far
I think that understanding the tax system is a hell for a lot of these small, medium-sized enterprises. It's not a problem.
It is.
You work in a lot of companies. You advise a lot of companies as well.
Yes, it is. So GRA should set up a unit where they go help some of these institutions. Now, if we are efficient, manage our costs very well, our profit will go up. The tax that government will generate would also go up. Working capital management would improve. Cash flow will improve. What government is looking for as taxes will be realized. Now, when the person runs his business in a bad manner and he's not doing well, cash flow is a problem. Let's say he takes a loan even from the banks. The first thing he would do is marry a new girl, look for chieftaincy, buy a new car, which has nothing to do with the business. So his business will collapse. Now you start chasing this person to pay tax. He can't. And if you're not careful, you will say, let's close him down. You close him down, business is gone, there's unemployment. What should you do? If the business he finds himself in is a good one, get people to help him recover. Get him pay the tax over time. Build his capacity. Then he becomes an employer, he becomes a better person. That is the way I would approach it, because we need government. Government needs the businesses. So it's not the other person against the other person. No, that's not the way we should be looking at it.
Doc, is this mantra about the bottom line still relevant, and will it still be relevant in a 2022 business year? Or, because, listen, Doc, I've gone to borrow. My shareholders are on my neck. Should it always be about the profits and the earnings that I will sacrifice everything to ensure that I post some good numbers so I get my target, my bonus, and my shareholders are then convinced to reinvest in the business?
Again, we need maturity in business. The first thing is you set up for a purpose. What is that purpose?
Profit is not matter, Doc?
Profit is a reward.
Shouldn't be the main focus.
No, the first thing is I want to offer
Your
solution.
shareholders will get out.
The shareholders
will get
set
out.
up to offer solution to somebody.
Not returns, Doc.
I'm saying when you find that solution for that person, you'll be rewarded. And you'll be amazed what the reward will be.
Interesting, Doc.
Yes, because we don't find solution. We do transactions instead of building relationships in business. He throws something at you. What you don't need is what he's selling to you. Once you discover that, you walk away. So find real solution for people, including government. Government must find solution for people, for citizens. And citizens will reward government by paying taxes. So we must get these fundamental principles right. Once you get it right, everything will work. Life is not about you, but it's about the other person. So how you serve that other person, sincerely meeting his needs, he will reward you.
Because the challenge is that in an era where shareholders are so difficult, in an era where shareholders are looking for other places to place their funds, if you're not going to end the year posting some good earnings, I'm going to look for somewhere else to invest.
Yes. The cash can fly. Okay. But cash will fly, will give you returns for a reason. You won't get returns out of nothing. You must put in the effort. The point I'm making, that if you take advantage of me today, yes, I've bought your goods. You told me it will function this way. It didn't. Tomorrow, I will not be there for you to sell to me again. I'll walk away. So it will be a 9-day wonder. You make profit this year, next year, there's no customer for you. That is why I said at the beginning, your focus should be on the customer.
The people.
Meet their need.
The customer.
What is it that they are looking for? Deliver that. Once they are happy, they will give you what you are also looking for. You see, if a lot of us in this country are Christians. You know, my favorite verse in the Bible is John 3:16.
God so loved the world.
Yes, God's demonstration is he first gave. So we must learn to first give, serve that customer, deliver value to that customer, and we will get what we are looking for.
But Doc, I mean, that's what it boils down to, and I get you, that at the end of the day, it's about passing the exams. At the end of the day, it's about getting the first class. No matter how good you are, how principled, practicing all the effective corporate governance,
certificates,
placing people on top, talking about customers. If all these things are practicing, and you can't deliver good earnings, sometimes your position even as MD or CEO is under threat.
Again, certificates don't work. It's human beings who work. And the purpose of the business is to serve another person. So the point I'm making, if you serve, the results will show.
The earnings will come?
It will come.
Interesting, Doc.
I put my neck on the chopping block. If you serve your customer very well, the customer will reward you.
Interesting.
Research any institution that is doing well on a sustained basis. You will see that they have built a relationship with the customer, which is lasting.
You think that those are some of the critical ingredients needed for this year?
I'm saying COVID is an issue. There's disruption to your customer. What is the level of that disruption? Do you understand it? If you do and you respond appropriately, you will get the results. But if you don't, and you think the customer is just there, you throw something at the customer, you will fail.
Let me bring in Professor Peter Kote. And Prof, also, let's also try and still look at the macro environment as well. For you, looking into the crystal ball, what would be the major threats out there for businesses in 2022?
Well, George, before I touch on that, let me quickly add a point to what
Dr. Sedo has said.
Sedo has said. You know, people set up businesses not just for profit. Some, when they see sales going up, they are happy. There are some who, when they see profits going up, they are happy. There are some who see employees, they are employing more people, they are happy. So in the industrial strategy, you set up a business for different motives. And for some, you're getting customers happy. When he has core group of customers who are happy, he's happy. He will not walk away with his capital. So I just want to throw this in that the bottom line or profit is not the only motive for setting up a business. Now, in terms of the macro economy, what are the things we ought to look out for?
Or maybe the threats to businesses.
Yeah, for businesses.
Yeah, threats.
Threat to businesses. Macro stability is key. We've seen global prices, oil prices going up. We've seen global value chain, cost of freight, and many other things going up. That could be a threat if it's not reversed. If it doesn't reverse, if global oil prices or energy prices continue to surge, we are likely to see rising inflation. Already, global inflation is increasing. We've seen even Bank of England and other places increasing their policy rates. So that can affect our local economy and can affect the business sector. Once there is macro instability, our interest rates, policy rate will have to go up. Our interest rates on our loans will also go up. So that is something we ought to watch out for. Exchange rate instability, depreciation, high rate of depreciation might also kick in if we continue to witness this surge in oil prices and other imported inflationary items. So those are all threats. Then our fiscal situation itself. If you look at our revenue expenditure trends, if government is able to, what is outlined in the 2022 budget, if government is able to achieve them, that will be very good. Then we are sure that the deficit might come down. We are sure that we will not have severe repercussions on exchange rates, inflation, and the like. But if government is unable to raise the needed revenue, now borrowing is the last resort, because we'll be punished if we should go to the capital market to borrow at this time. It's not very conducive. So you've seen that government has slowed down its borrowing. And if it might have to borrow, they might even look within. So raising more revenue domestically is the sure way to go. Unfortunately, we've had a challenge with an aspect of the revenue mobilization, that's the e-levy. I believe,
and Prof, we'll be moving to the larger, bigger economy and what government should be doing as well. But now I just want to look at for those businesses as well. What are some of the threats you think it will pose to them and how they should strategize, Prof?
Yeah, so I've spoken about interest rates, exchange rates, etc. Of course, this can also have repercussions on even utilities, electricity supply. If crude prices go up, finding the money, the exchange rate to even pay for crude, gas, oil and gas and many others may be challenged, and that could affect the supply of energy. And you know, businesses thrive on energy. Homes and business thrive on stable supply of power, and that could be a threat to the business environment.
Okay. Bro, I'll be coming back to you on the bigger economy as we move to that as well. But Doc, for you, the Ghana cedi, is it your biggest challenge or hurdle as a businessman, or do you think that it will still be a bigger challenge this year for a lot of businesses out there?
No, the city would always be a challenge as long as we run our economy the way we do.
Why are we not getting around the dog?
Yes. No, we need to engage and talk about the real issues confronting us. To borrow to prop up the city is not the way to go. We need to be productive and to be efficient at production to export. Now, we must know that we are competing with the rest of the world. So if we produce and we are very expensive, we are not competitive. So we must find a way of being efficient. And it's the chicken and the egg. Government must give something and reduce the taxes, let people produce efficiently, export. Then you get a foreign currency. But if we don't do that and we think, oh, people will bring money, when it's time to take that money out, then we are under pressure. It will be that cycle that will be running, and that's what we are seeing. The revenues are challenged for 2022. The people we intend to raise the money from are themselves struggling. So it will be a challenge. And then we do a lot of imports, unnecessary imports. Then what is letting us encourage those imports is because we are generating tax revenues from the ports. So we would have to tell ourselves we must give something to get what we are looking for. Because
would you suggest that I know it's an expensive thing, some will say, listen, tell this thing to the Univers and the Anglo Goats. I mean, hedging. What steps should you be taking to minimize the shocks? Because it appears that the city might take a hit this year as well. And how do you minimize the shocks on your operations as a business person?
No, let's say a lot of the people who consume the foreign exchange are those who import.
Yeah.
Can we get those groupings to also get themselves involved in exporting? So as they are consuming, they are generating. That's for me. If we can get that balance, it will reduce the pressure. What is it that we use foreign currency for? As long as we mobilize resources locally in city and spend it on recurrent expenditure, and don't put it in productive things, don't put it in creative things, that would also put pressure on us. So we need to move away from borrowing to consume. We must borrow to do productive things. And till we get into production, we will not solve this problem. And if we talk about this exchange things, we talk about interest rate. The fundamental issue has to do with efficiency. We are not creating.
And I think that it might be a good time, though, for us to look at the broader economy and discussion, whilst also bringing Pro as well.
Yes.
Because I think we've done a lot on businesses as well.
Yes.
For you, what should government be doing differently this year? Let's first start with the bit on the Ghana city, because it appears that it will still be a major challenge this year.
It will be.
What should they do differently in terms of the economic strategy?
We need to focus within
domestic consumption.
Yes, we need to focus a lot more on agric, and we need to do a lot more export of agricultural products. Now, what you're saying is that we are competing with the U.S. Once the U.S. economy is peaking, they need money. Then they move money from here. Those who brought the money from U.S., they move it from here back to the U.S. We can't continue with that line of competition. We must put in our own effort, produce, be creative. Once you are not creative, look, agriculture is about creation. Once you are being creative and exporting, then you are getting out of the hole. But the borrowing will not solve any problem.
Prof, revenue. What should be the strategy? Already, there's talk about benchmark value being suspended. That would impact on our projected revenue for the year. Already, there's this still merry-go-round about e-levy. That would impact on revenue at the end of the year. What should government be doing differently to ensure that this year they get it right, revenue? I think that you muted your
George, I mean, if you look at the Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Prof. I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Prof.
Yes. Okay, yes. So what I'm saying is, good. If you look at the 2022 budget, you see a lot of policies, new policies to revive revenue mobilization in terms of ensuring tax efficiency, using digitalization to rake in more tax revenue. We have said this from time to time, but we don't really implement them as we should. I don't think we should introduce new taxes.
Okay.
I don't think we should increase the tax rate.
You believe in efficiency, just like what Dr.
Efficiency.
Efficiency is the answer.
Efficiency in tax collection. If we are able to take out the middleman, in other words, if we're able to ensure that people pay straight into government chests, like is being done through the GRA portal and many others, will reduce a lot of the corruption, the leakages in the system. Ensuring tax efficiency is one of the surest ways that government can raise revenue. We have also not done so well with non-tax revenue. It's always raising taxes here and there, but there are non-tax revenue, like property rates, for instance. We've allowed the local authorities, the local government or the district assemblies to mobilize these resources. I don't think we have been efficient in mobilizing these resources. Perhaps the central government should come in and either through digitalization or other more efficient ways to ensure that we mobilize property rates and many other non-tax revenue. There are a lot of opportunities out there for revenue mobilization. We have not. Government has SOEs that should be profit-making, but they are not. A lot of them rather serve as a drain.
Depend on government. No, Prof, sorry to butt in here. You're talking about efficiency. Do you think that the problem with revenue mobilization is the political will and this challenge about too much of thinking about the political economy than thinking about the real economy? Now, you heard today about this benchmark value being suspended. I believe that in planning for the year in terms of projected revenue, it was factored into it. Now, what is going to happen to the fact that it's been suspended for a while? E-levy, we are still struggling to see whether it will take off or not. Some are saying that sometimes it's about taking the tough political decisions to ensure that we raise the required revenue. Do you think that's also a big challenge for government?
Well, I won't see it with lack of political will. The issue is with democracy is that the political economy issues also come to play. Economics and also political economy. As government, any government would like to retain power, any government would like to win votes. So when you introduce a policy and some good number of citizens or voters kick against it, you step back and listen. So that is the dilemma I can see government facing. It is listening to AGI, it is also listening to Buta. And it's, to strike a fine balance is where it has to perhaps get them to the table and ensure that it's able to mobilize revenue. It's not purely an issue of lack of political will. It's also the issue of the votes, trying to get the votes when it matters. And that has been a big challenge to most governments. That is why some policies, taking the tough decisions, has not been an easy way for many governments in the past.
Prof, let me quickly bring in Dr. Sedo. I mean, as a businessman, is it a challenge for you when I know about the political economy, but when certain tough business economic decision has to be taken for the welfare of businesses, then politics is also thrown in, and you still don't see your way clear because as a business person, you want to plan, you want to know that this is the macro situation and this is my plan and my strategy. Doc.
The planning should be for everybody. We have one country called Ghana, whether you are on the side of government or on the side of business, we are all looking for the same thing. And I think we should be working together. And it's about setting our priorities right. I think what if the politicians are listening, now they must throw something at businesses. I keep talking about delivering value and being rewarded. Now, for instance, if we talk about property rates, everybody thinks it's as easy as. But if you study as carefully, many uncompleted buildings, is that the one they want them to pay the property rate on? Then you have our siblings in diaspora who have built, the house is sitting idle. To what use do we put these assets? How we allocate resources is our major problem in this country. We claim we don't have money, but you see buildings springing up. You know what that means? It means that they do not have confidence to put that money into some productive venture. So they want to see it going up. We've locked it up. Then we pay the taxes to government. And instead of it also being used for productive things, which must come back to serve business, it's used on expenditure, consumption.
Doc, it might be a good time for us to take this a short commercial break. This is PM Express Business Edition as we talk about the 2022 business and economic strategy. How should you implement that strategy to ensure that you end the year on a good note? I'm engaging Professor Peter Corte is an economist and director of ESA. Dr. Daniel Sedo is a financial consultant and a strategist as well. We take a short break and we'll be right back. First, it's PM Express. Welcome to PM Express Business Edition as we look at the 2022 business strategy and economy. How should you implement that strategy of yours that you've planned last year to ensure that you end the year on a good note? And what about the bigger macro economy as well? How should government do things to ensure that they end the year on a good note that benefits you, the business person out there, and even the individual? Professor Peter Corte is an economist and director of ESA, and Dr. Daniel Sedo is a financial consultant and a strategist as well. So we're looking at the bigger economy as well. Let me quickly get back to Professor Peter Corte and get his thoughts on the bit about expenditure as well, and how should we try and deal with it this year, because it looks like it is still a big challenge. Today, Bloomberg was reporting about even some offshore investors raising serious concerns about our economy and more of getting or placing our bonds in junk status. Prof, expenditure 2022, how should we work around it to get it right?
Yes, the best way would be to get value for money in most of the spending that we undertake. We certainly have to prioritize our expenditure. We cannot do everything in a year. We ought to prioritize our expenditure and also ensure value for money. There are quite a number of areas where we spend and we end up perhaps at the end of the day paying twice or three times what we should have spent. Roads, for instance, we start roads, we don't finish in a year. By the time the road is completed, price has doubled or quadrupled. I think we ought to finance projects that we have the funding. If not, then we ought to be very careful. So value for money in spending is very critical. I see a lot of wage agitations. It worries me. In 2022, there's a lot of instability on the labor front. I think there should be dialogue on both sides based on data, based on consensus building, and we ensure that yes, this is the reality on the ground. If we engage labor to understand the real situation, and also politicians don't pay themselves higher wage increases or salary increases while they ask the ordinary worker to tighten his belt, but we all fairly pay ourselves based on what we have in the kitchen. I believe the labor unrest or instability would be minimized. So these are the two areas: ensuring value for money in terms of our spending, prioritizing our expenditure, as well as managing the labor front. Otherwise, it could lead to a lot of hardships going forward.
Let me bring it, Doc. I mean, and for you, I mean, in terms of this year, as a business person, I mean, as a consultant, and what advice you have for businesses in terms of the optimism? Because some are still saying that it's still not clear when you look into the crystal ball as to what we should be expecting. And what should government be doing right to ensure that it protects the business environment or put things in place that will aid the growth of businesses?
Yeah, in the first place, we don't have to give up. This is just...
We should be quite optimistic for this year in the midst of all these problems.
Yes, we should be optimistic and we should work very hard. We should put on the thinking cap. We need to think harder than what we are doing, and we need to be very creative. We need to be very creative. And saying that means we need to be very efficient, both ways, government and the private sector or industry. Now, for industry, it's about resource allocation and resource utilization. Earlier on, you talk about returns. Now, when you deploy your resources, you deploy it into an area that the return is the highest. You look out for that one. And I'll tie in with what I've been saying, deliver value and get rewarded. Now, government should rather think of, again, I use the word throw something, meaning drop the taxes, increase consumption, and get the taxes out of consumption. Then the people know that their disposable income is up. They will spend. You will get your VATs and whatnot.
In terms of the tax strategy, more of reduce the rates,
yes.
Let people work more, pay more, and you might end up hitting your target.
Exactly so. Then also engage the companies. Look, there's somebody I talk about in GRA. She's retired now. In my previous life, she called my office after 6. What is the issue? She says, you don't owe, but we are having challenges. Can you please pay something on account? I said, oh, GRA, you call me after 6. Yes, we will pay something on account. Now, if you build relationship with companies, they will support you. But if you go aggressively, you antagonize them, that is when people try to find ways of doing things. Then when we get the taxes, do something for people. Now you talk about property rate. People have paid. What do they have to show for paying? Nothing. Will they continue to pay? It's a problem.
Doc, I can't let you go being looking at the area that you are coming from.
Yes.
And as we wrap up the discussion because of time constraints, about the challenges facing SNITs right now. And for you, what do you think is the way forward? There's talk about liquidity issues, there are concerns about whether going forward they can sustain the scheme and all the rest. I mean, in just wrapping up with you on that, for you, what do you think we should do as SNIT to address these current challenges facing?
What we should do is to be honest with ourselves. And I've said it 2017, I ran into problem. I'll repeat it.
Hope you don't get into problem again.
I'll repeat it. We should learn from Nigeria. We should engage Obasanjo to tell us what to do with SNIT. Privatize it? Privatize it. Because, look, what we are doing cannot be sustained. What we are hearing didn't start today. It's a difficult one.
Let me just get quickly, Professor Peter Kote, in 30 seconds, your wrap up in terms of going forward, strategy, the economy, in about a minute, Prof.
Well, I think there are great prospects. If you look at our growth trajectory, there are growth prospects which might minimize some of the challenges we are facing. But we ought to invest in the critical sectors. We ought to invest in agriculture especially. We ought to invest in making the private sector flourish. And also, government has to ensure that it's able to spend efficiently as well as raise enough domestic revenue. Continuing to borrow to finance our expenditure is not the best way to go, given where we find ourselves.
Dr. Sedo, I mean, in wrapping up, and as you wrap up on the SNIT issues and other issues that you want us to wrap up, Doc.
No, we should not give up. First and foremost, we are human beings, and it will take us to solve the problems. I think we should engage a lot more. We should be accommodating, and we should listen to ourselves. I believe we'll find the answer.
Dr. Nesero said we will find the answer, engage more, making people the center of your strategy for this year, and that might get you the results. This is PM Express Business Edition as we talk about the business strategy and economic as well. And how do you ensure that we end the 2022 year on a good note? My name is Joel Jaffe. Have a great day.